I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us here on Closing Arguments. And there's a big trial that is getting ready to go down in Tallahassee, Florida. You may be familiar, you may not be familiar with it. It involves a law professor, Dan Markel. He was the victim. He was killed by a hitman, someone who admits that he was a hitman. Took him out. Dan Markel was in the middle of a custody battle. And this was a murder for hire case. And now, finally, his brother-in-law, who, according to prosecutors, ordered the hit, will be tried. I mean, many years after it should have happened, because there have been a couple of trials already in this case. But now, finally, Charlie Adelson has been charged. We've got the witness list tonight for this case, and there's some shocking names on that list. Before we get to that, though, Julie Janae, Court TV legal correspondent, has the whole story for us tonight.
To this day, do you think he's guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that he should be prosecuted for his involvement in the murder of Dan Markel?
Yes, ma'am.
That's Catherine Magbanua talking about her ex-boyfriend, Charles Adelson, during her murder trial for the death of Florida State law professor Dan Markel.
Do you think he should come forward and let the jury know that you had nothing to do with this?
Yes, ma'am.
It was Magbanua's second trial for Markel's death after a jury deadlocked in her first trial in 2019. The second time around, a jury rejected her claims of innocence.
The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Now, Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson, Markel's former brother-in-law.
What enemy or enemies had Mr. Markel made that set into motion such a brutal act? The answer is own family.
It would take 8 years for prosecutors to bring a case against Adelson to a grand jury, despite early suspicions of his possible involvement. Markel was involved in a bitter child custody dispute with Adelson's sister, Wendy, when he was gunned down in his driveway in 2014. Wendy Adelson testified that there was ill will between her ex-husband and her brother.
He had bought me a TV when I got divorced and said it was a present and made a very bad joke and bad taste that it was cheaper than hiring a hitman.
But prosecutors say Adelson did hire hitmen with Magbanua's help. Sigfredo Garcia, the father of Magbanua's children, and Luis Rivera, a gang member and friend of Garcia's. Rivera pleaded guilty in exchange for testimony implicating Garcia as the gunman and Magbanua as the link to the Adelson family.
I gave him the truth, bro. I'm not gonna go back and forth with you, man. I gave him the truth. Like, it was Katie and Garcia. It was all three of us was involved.
Investigators used a sprawling web of surveillance video, wiretaps, and cell tower data to connect a vehicle that was leaving the crime scene to Garcia and Rivera. Connecting Magbanua to the plot would prove more difficult because she wasn't involved, according to Magbanua's lawyers.
It wasn't through Catherine Magbanua. This wasn't something that was negotiated through Catherine Magbanua. It was about her. The communications that we have between Sigfredo Garcia and Charles Adelson in the weeks before the murder, in the days before the murder, are consistent with the fact that there was a deal between the two of them, and part of that deal was Charles Adelson breaking up with Catherine so that Sigfredo could get back the woman that he loved so much.
What's different now? Leon County prosecutors say they have a new version of secretly recorded video showing Magbanua and Adelson in a restaurant in 2016 with enhanced audio.
Listen, if a badge comes up to you, tell them have a nice day, officer. Listen, if they want to charge you with something, charge me. If not, I don't talk to cops.
Prosecutors showed the video to the jury in Magbanua's retrial and to the grand jury that indicted Charles Adelson.
The piece of evidence was something that I did think was important, and I've always felt like if we could just get that clarified, that would make a big difference potentially in the case, so I was really happy to have that piece of evidence to present to the grand jury.
Charles Adelson now faces the same charges that Magbanua was convicted of: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. Adelson has pleaded not guilty and maintains his innocence.
Now, the witness list. Take a look. This is the state's witness list, the prosecution. Take a look at who's on it. Catherine Magbanua. is on the state's witness list. Okay, so perspective here. According to prosecutors, Charlie coordinates with Catherine to get her boyfriend and recruit his Latin King gang member friend to go from South Florida up to Tallahassee to commit the murder. But I want you to take a listen to what Catherine Magbanua testified to, sworn testimony in front of a judge and in front of a jury twice in 2 different trials. Take a listen.
Did you have anything to do with the murder of Dan Markel?
No, ma'am.
Did you get the father of your children, Mr. Garcia, to commit a murder on behalf of Mr. Charlie Adelson?
No, ma'am.
To this day, do you think he's guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that he should be prosecuted for his involvement in the murder of Dan Markel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you think he should come forward and let the jury know that you had nothing to do with this?
Yes, ma'am.
2 times, 2 different trials, she said, I have nothing to do with it, folks. Not me. I had nothing to do with it. Now she's on the state's witness list? What is she going to testify to? Now that I'm a convicted murderer, now I'm going to tell you the truth in front of the jury? I don't trust her, period. And if I'm the prosecutor, I don't think I want her on the witness stand in my case. Anyway, she's on the list. Now, who else is on the list? Let's take a look at the state's witness list, who they put on there. The Adelsons, Donna, the mom, Harvey, the dad, and Wendy, the victim's ex-wife, the defendant's sister. That's the state's witness list. Let's take a look at the defense witness list. Donna, the mom, Harvey, the dad, and Wendy, the ex-wife of the victim and the sister of the defendant. Both sides want the Adelsons to testify. Confuses me a little bit. Wendy Adelson, though, has already testified twice at both trials. Here's the part of her testimony that everybody remembers.
Did he mention hiring a hitman to kill your husband?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
No.
Did he ever joke about he looked into hiring a hitman, but buying you a TV as a divorce present would be cheaper?
He did make that joke. He tended to repeat himself, and sometimes he would make jokes that weren't very funny about all kinds of things.
All right, and was that TV, did he buy you a TV as a divorce present?
He did.
Okay, so I expect her to testify again as part of the prosecution case. I don't know what the defense is going to use her for. Let's bring in our think tank, figure out what's going on here. Joining us tonight in New York City, former senior homicide prosecutor and founder of Villalona Law, Bernarda Villalona. Also with us in Columbia, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney Lori Murray. You can catch her on TikTok, Lawyer Lori on TikTok, millions and millions of views. And in Cleveland, Ohio, criminal defense attorney Ian Friedman. Great to see everyone tonight. Bernard, I'll begin with you. What on earth do you think the prosecution is doing here? Do you think they are going to give something to Catherine Magbanua in exchange for her testimony? Twice she has gotten into that courtroom, and it'll probably be the same courtroom where this trial is, sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and told 2 different juries and the judge that she had nothing to do with this.
Vinny, this trial is going to be a hot mess because, as you stated, look, Vinny, Magbanua has already testified twice on her own behalf at both of her trials. And now, all of a sudden, the prosecution wants to use her as a main witness on the trial against Charlie Adelson. The problem that you have here is, number one, I'm sure she's not doing it out of her own volition. She's expecting something out of it. She's not going to testify just to testify. But number two also is that the jury's going to have to decide credibility. And in deciding credibility, they're going to have to look at prior statements made by her and her statements that she's making presently at trial and try to reconcile all three of these statements. And third, the prosecutor's going to have to come up with some kind of credible, plausible reasoning for her lying before or misstating the evidence before both of her prior trials, and try to hope that they can sell it to this new jury to believe that what she's about to say in this third trial having to deal with Charlie Adelson is the actual truth. But it's going to be difficult for any jury to try to get past all of these different statements. I hope that the prosecution has stronger evidence and are not banking their entire case on someone that's been convicted already for this murder and who previously stated she had nothing to do with it, and Charlie Adelson that she did not have any direct evidence that he was responsible for it.
Yeah, she said, I don't know anything about. Lori, I'm looking at the case. I think the defense will have a field day with Catherine Magbanua, but is there some danger there? Because, I mean, why on earth would she direct her boyfriend or the father of her children to go kill her boyfriend or other ex-boyfriend's ex-brother-in-law? I mean, there's no motive there. But can a jury believe this woman if she now testifies that, oh yeah, Charlie told me to get Sigfredo and his friend to go kill Professor Markel?
Well, you know, I think the problem is that they kind of need her testimony because she is the link. She's the link from the defendant to the actual killers. So they need her testimony a little bit, but it wouldn't surprise me if they just put her on the list and never called her. You know, they do that all the time just to throw off the defense. So it wouldn't be surprising to me. But it also wouldn't be surprising to me if the state promised her a cut in her time for coming in and testifying. So she's going to have to do something that's, you know, makes herself a little bit more credible. We had a conversation. I didn't know he was going to do it. I told him that my ex may have done, you know, may do this for him. But what he did after that, I don't know. I had no part of it. But, you know, the state's got to be real careful about putting somebody up there that might perjure themselves. They know they can't do that. And so it's a whole hot mess. Her testimony is a hot mess. That's why I don't know that they'll even call her. I think she's just on the witness list.
Yeah, I would not call her. I don't want her anywhere near my case. They were able to convince a jury that she was guilty, and they were able to connect her to Charlie Adelson. So I don't know why they can't do the same thing in this next trial. Now, Ian Friedman, I want to talk about the Adelsons. I think the best defense for Charlie Adelson would be for, like, his mom and or dad to come into court and admit to it. No, we're the ones who hired, who told Catherine to get someone to get rid of him. I mean, to me, that would just throw this whole thing up in the air. But I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that's his best defense. If his parents really love him, that's what they would do. But what do you expect to hear from the Adelsons? Will they take the fifth? Will they testify for the state? Will they testify for the defense? What would they say?
You know, it's real difficult to know what they're going to say. The fact that they're on both sets of witness lists, though, is not unusual. Both sides usually say we're going to incorporate the witnesses as the other because we don't know what's going to happen at trial. So in this case, it's really hard to know what they're going to say. Yeah, you're right, Vinny. If they came in and said they did it out of the love for their child, that would be obviously a great defense. I don't see that happening either. We're not going to know exactly what their value is, if any, until this trial starts, though.
Bernardo?
You know, I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose it could be, were there any statements made? Just like when they were questioning the sister earlier on. There may be some disclosures that were made that they're going to be asking of the parents. But until that trial starts, we're not going to.
Bernard, if you're representing the Adelsons, and we know that in one situation, They did put like a wire on an agent and did a little bump with Donna Adelson in the streets. Would you allow them to testify if they were subpoenaed to come to court? Would you have them take the fifth? Because clearly they're still on the radar of investigators and the prosecution here.
Absolutely. If I were the attorney for either of the parents, I would not have them testify unless the prosecution would be willing to give them immunity. And even with giving them immunity, you're asking the parents to testify against their own child. So even then, I find it hard to believe that either of these parents are going to testify without either one, immunity, or at least without even consulting with an attorney, because they both have exposure. We can't say that, oh, they're not going to charge me because it's been so many years and the only person they arrested now is Charlie Adelson. You just don't know, and you don't want to roll the dice that way. You have to be strategic, and whoever represents the parents need to know that. Of course, they are the attorneys for the parents. They should be looking out for the best interests of mom and the best interests of dad. And actually, mom and dad should get separate attorneys. It shouldn't be the same attorney.
So, Lori, Wendy Adelson, Dan Markel's ex-wife, she got limited immunity, I believe use immunity, for what she testified, and she was called by the prosecution in both cases. I presume she'll be called again because of that statement that she's testified to about her brother, Charlie, now the defendant, joking about hiring a hitman. Do you think she could ever be charged in this case?
I don't think they found anything that ties her to this case. And how sad is it that he just took it upon himself to go out and kill her ex-husband for her? And personally, I don't know anybody that loves me that much. And you know, you talked about the kids, you know, him saying, or the parents coming in and saying that they did it. I don't love my kids that much. So maybe we're missing something, and this is a whole different type of family dynamic. But, you know, I think there's no evidence tying Wendy to this. I think that Wendy is probably in the clear, or they would have found something by now. And it really is unusual that someone comes in and just really takes it upon themselves. He's missing a screw.
Yeah. I think people love Lori Murray, especially on TikTok. Those people would take the fall for you. They will take the fall for you.